Hello. Welcome, everybody, to this afternoon session. Thanks for coming. We're here to talk about driving product excellence based on feedback from users like yourselves. So my name is Gill Ward. I'm a user experience research lead in G Suite and a quantitative UX researcher.
I'm Lindsay Moore. I'm a qualitative user experience researcher for Google Drive.
I'm Joe Beers. I'm the Vice President, Chief Information Officer of Hingham Institution for Savings.
And I'm Ben Drury. I'm a qualitative user experience researcher focused on the Hangouts video meeting experience. So we're going to talk to you today about how we incorporate user feedback and to develop products that we think work really well for our users. We think it's especially important to keep our users' needs in mind when we're developing products for productivity and collaboration. So late last year, the UX director for G Suite, Lucas Pettinotti, published an article in Fast Company titled "How to Test Products Like a Googler." In this, now it's changing, okay. In this article, he made the argument that you should be collecting feedback not just to make sure what you're already working on is the right thing to be working on and to confirm your direction. Instead, you should be getting feedback in order to figure out new things you should be working on, to uncover new user needs and to push your team in new and creative directions. So we want to talk a little bit about how we do this at Google. So we're going to start by sharing a little bit of an inside look at how we focus on user journeys rather than features. And then we're going to talk you through the whole product feedback cycle, from uncovering user needs early on, collecting early feedback, all the way through to launch when we continue to collect feedback via metrics and analytics. We're then going to do a deep dive into how Team Drive ran a user feedback program to get their product to the state that it's in today. So we believe that in order to build robust, excellent products, you really need to ensure that you're building products that are going to meet your users' needs. So we always have the end user in mind. Before we even start building something, we're talking to users to find out what problems they have and how we can help solve those problems. We want to know how they're trying to get their work done. We want the products to be useful, easy to use, and always reliable. So we've moved away from thinking about individual features, and instead we think about the broader goals that our users have in mind. And I'm going to give you a kind of a silly example of this. So how many of you have heard of H-Day? Nobody? OK. So H-Day was a day in 1967 when Sweden switched from driving on the left side of the road to driving on the right side of the road, all overnight, which sounds kind of crazy. But I want you to imagine that you're living outside of Stockholm at this time, just before H-Day happens. And you have one goal in mind every morning, and that is to get to work on time. So you drive into work, and it's pretty straightforward. Every day you follow the same roads, you make the same turns. Maybe you're spending more time admiring the beautiful city around you than actually thinking about how all these connections go together. But eventually you end up at this one-way road, you turn down it, and great, you're at work. You've made it there on time, you've accomplished your goal. Now H-Day arrives, and everything is switched. So you're going to be going to work for the first time, driving on the other side of the road, and you're pretty worried about how this is going to work. You leave a little bit earlier than usual. Maybe you're driving a little bit slower than usual. You might be driving more carefully than usual. But overall, you're finding that it's actually working pretty well. You're on the other side of the road, but you're still making good time to work until you hit that one-way road close to your work. And instead of driving down it, you see a do not enter sign because the one-way road is flipped in the opposite direction. So why am I talking about this? It represents exactly why we need to focus on journeys instead of features. Because when we look at each individual component of this journey, they all work the same way they always did before. So a two-way road still allows traffic to go in two directions. Signs mean the same thing that they've always meant. And your car fundamentally works the same way that it always worked. The problem is when you connect all these pieces together, you can no longer accomplish your goal of getting to work on time because of that one little tweak at the end. So we look at the overall picture, the journey, and the user fails at their goal. So I want to take this back to software development. So we know that our users don't think about individual features. They just think about what they want to get done at work and how they can be most productive. So imagine that you just want to send a video to one of your colleagues. Your goal is to get this video to your colleague. This sounds simple enough, but it actually used to be kind of challenging in Gmail because of the size limits on files that you could attach to an email. But we've improved this greatly. And today, when you attach a large file to an email, instead of it not sending, you are prompted to upload it to Drive, and then prompted to share it with your colleagues. This might not be the journey that you're expecting to take, but you're able to achieve your goal, and it's very easy for you to do that. So we've allowed people to get their work done quickly. So for some of you, you might be thinking, great, but I don't need to send emails with videos to my colleagues. That's not like a fundamental goal of what I do. And we understand that, and that's another really important point here, is that people in different roles have different goals, and they need to accomplish different tasks. Take, for example, your sales representatives. They spend a lot of time on the phone. Fundamentally, they're all about setting meetings, getting feedback from their customers, and keeping track of all of those things, maybe in a spreadsheet. Your developers, on the other hand, they're spending time heads down writing code, trying to build that next great app that can scale in response to increased traffic. Their goal is just to get that app out the door and make sure that it's always up and running. And then finally, your G Suite admin, which is probably some of you in this room, you're the buffer between your end users and Google. You're there to roll out new products, help people learn how to use those products. You might jump on video to help them troubleshoot a new product, and you might jump into the cPanel to understand who's adopting the product and where you need to help people more to start using the product. So the question now is, how do we make sure that we get all of these voices involved as we're getting feedback from our customers? And I'm going to hand it over to Gill now for that.
Great. Thanks, Ben. OK, so let's get into the heart of this talk. How we gather user feedback, and then how we leverage that to make an impact in our products. But before we do that, I want to get a sense of your experience with user research and with providing feedback to Google. So have you ever, please raise your hand, submitted feedback in product or through surveys in products? Great. That's awesome to see. How about participated in a usability test? Wow, that's a lot more than I was expecting. Awesome. Have you been observed by a researcher in your workplace? Even a few of those too. That's great. So we've had a lot of different exposure to UX research. And we're going to talk a little bit more about all these different methods and how we leverage them within Google. We're going to break this down into 4 different stages. From an early stage of discovery and testing, through trusted tester, early adopter, and general availability. And throughout all of the examples that we're talking about, we're going to try and point out exactly what impact our research has had on those products. Because it's really important to us that whatever research we do does have an impact. We know that your time is valuable, and we want to make sure that we can leverage that. Saying that, I'm not going to be able to provide pinpointed evidence of all the impact that we've had, because some of this research has just been too recent. And obviously, we can't talk about product direction. So bear with me there. OK, so let's dive into the earliest stage. At this point, we're defining new products. We're fleshing out the feature set. We're pinning down the details of those products. There are 2 main types of research that we do at this point. I'll give you an example of a discovery type, an example of a testing type of research. But before that, who has heard of eat your own dog food? OK, so quite a lot of people. So the premise behind this is, before we give our products to users, we should be using them ourselves, right? And luckily, we have a lot of Googlers who really care about our products. And so they will take time working with really early stage products that are really rough around the edges. They probably have lots of bugs in them. They might not be quite usable just yet. But they will give us really opinionated and critical feedback. They do not hold back. And that helps us move that product forwards. It helps us iron out those rough edges. And it helps us fix a lot of those early bugs. But we know that Googlers aren't like our G Suite users, right? In many ways, one example, if a Googler is trying to create a document or a spreadsheet or a presentation, typically we use our G Suite editors to do that. And we know that for a lot of our customers, on the other hand, Microsoft is still part and parcel of their workday. So if we just focused on Googlers, we wouldn't understand how our products interfaced with Microsoft's products. So that's sort of one example where we really need to get outside of Google. So we do. We want to figuratively peer in to different workplaces to understand what's happening in our users' lives. And there are 3 reasons why we want to do this. We want to understand their user journeys. We want to understand what they're trying to achieve, what tools they're using, whether it's our tools or other tools, what tools they're using to do that. The flip side of that is, of course, what's holding them back? What are the obstacles? What are the opportunities that we have to improve those user journeys? And then thirdly, we can also get some really great early feedback about our new products. If we have a potential idea, we can test it out with our users. Does it resonate with them? Okay, so the first 2 of these, we're going to use this first method, the discovery type method. And that's going to give us a lot of insight into those first 2 types. So this discovery, this exploratory phase, we're really trying to get a holistic understanding. We want to see how people work in the workplace relative to their team, relative to the organization as a whole, when they're working by themselves. And this example, this photo is taken from an example a few years ago. We took a number of engineers, product managers, designers, as well as researchers into multiple companies across the US and internationally too. And we gave them this guidebook. And it can guide them through questions that they can ask people that they meet, things to look out for. And they have a place to write down notes, which we then brought back into Google and we could share between us. So there were 2 really awesome outcomes. The first of these was we got our engineers, our product team, talking with our end users. And that enables our engineers to really gain empathy and understanding of our users. It's one of the most powerful tools that we have as researchers. The flip side of that, of course, is we have a ton of data. So we trawled through all of that data, and there was so much information in there, bugs that needed to be fixed, feature requests. But then we also started to see high-level patterns. And one of those high-level patterns was that, even 3 or 4 years ago when we did this study, mobile was ubiquitous in the workplace. And that brought us to start focusing on mobile to ensure that we have parity between our mobile and desktop products. And we're at the point now where I can take my phone, I can start a document, I can leave comments on somebody else's documents, I can collaborate with my team wherever I am. So we really see this long-term impact from this kind of research. So that's the discovery research. On the opposite side, we have testing. So we do iterative research on early-stage concepts or even later-stage products where we just need to figure out the user interaction with this product. We need to iron out those edges. And we have individuals either come in to Google, or we interview them over video chat as well. And we get them to walk through a scenario using either the concept or the product, and get them to do that representative task so that we can see how they perform that task. And there's a number of different things we can pull out of that. We get a sense of, does the concept resonate with them? Is this a problem that our users are actually trying to solve? Does the current setup, is it usable? Can people achieve that goal? And then we also just get to hear other concerns and other feedback. And so from this, we get really early feedback that can help us hone the direction of our product and give us confidence that we are heading in the right direction. We run these studies every week across the US, across the world. And so, of course, that means that we always need more people to test with. So if you would like to join with us and provide feedback in that manner, we would love to have you sign up. There's a couple more QR codes at the back of the room on the way out, too. This research panel is for G Suite end users. We're looking for companies who will sign up. We can't promise that everybody will be able to join the panel at this stage, because it is a pilot. But we're hoping to get lots of people signing up so that we can continue to do this early stage research and allow you to have an impact in our product direction. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Ben.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the next couple areas where we get feedback. These are trusted testers and early adopter programs, which are more formal collaborations with small groups of our users. In both of these phases, we work with a cross-section of businesses, different sizes, different verticals, to try and be as representative of the kind of people that we work with every day as we possibly can. And we're really focused on fit and finish rather than discovering new product directions, but you'll see there are some times where we make some interesting tweaks to our products. I'm going to use the new Hangouts video meeting experience as the example here. When we kicked off this project, we really wanted to take a fresh new look on how we could build an enterprise-focused video meeting software that would work well across web, mobile, and in the in-room experience, dedicated meeting rooms. And we wanted to focus on identifying those core pain points that people experience with the offerings today, eliminate those, and make a product that would really make for effective meetings. So we started with that early discovery work that Gill mentioned already, and two really key parts here were field visits and interviews. So with field visits, we were able to actually go out to some of our customers and observe them using their existing software to complete video meetings. We were able to see these social interactions and what makes a meeting really flow and what's important to making a meeting productive. We then did deep dive interviews with some of the people who participated in those meetings to understand how much those problems come up, like how frequently do they encounter those problems, and what are the sort of common themes that they see in terms of trying to make their meetings more productive. And we learned two really interesting things here. The first is that people really care about big meetings. They don't want to have to worry about the number of people they're inviting to a meeting. They just want to be able to have as many people in that meeting as possible. The second is that they really care about people being able to get into the meeting easily. And this doesn't just mean that we should do a great job of getting people into a video meeting. It also means that we have to open it up to people who are dialing in on their phones. So to meet market needs, we need to make it so that if you have somebody who's traveling and doesn't have a good Wi-Fi connection, or you have a customer who just doesn't like showing up on video conferencing, they're able to connect to your meeting as well. So these were two things that we sort of incorporated into our work in building and designing this new product. I'm going to skip over the phase where we did some usability testing and dogfooding here, and jump right into our trusted tester program. So trusted tester is an invite-only program where UX, product, and sales works really closely together to identify a small subset of our users who are willing to sort of take the risk to work with us with a product that's not fully fleshed out yet. We want people who are responsive, constructively critical, willing to give lots of feedback, and also willing to experiment with us a little bit as they try out these products. We ask for a lot of regular feedback, and we're working very, very closely with our admins at this point. But we think that there's a mutually beneficial relationship here because the admins also get the chance to see a new product and really be involved in the roadmap for that product. So we engage closely with G Suite admins, trying to build up their confidence that they can roll this product out to all of their end users. The goal is for them to roll it out to everybody in their company so that they can then bubble up as much feedback as possible from their end users to say how well the product is working in supporting user needs. So this gives us a chance to kind of test the product in the wild and see what user journeys people are taking with it. In this case, we also did some observations. So once they had rolled the product out to their end users, we went out and actually watched them participating in meetings with the new Hangouts video meeting experience, and then conducted some surveys to understand how it compared to their past experiences. And again, we got some interesting insights here. Sitting in on those meetings, we saw that at almost every meeting people have with lots of people joining on video, somebody joins with their mic not muted from a loud room or from a bus station or something. And this is really disruptive. You suddenly have somebody with a lot of background noise joining a meeting. So we realized what we needed to do is make it really easy to quiet that person down and try and remove that disruption. So we took the time to rework the UI and make it much quicker to find the controls for muting somebody who joins a meeting. So as a meeting host, you have more control over the meeting experience. And we think it's small tweaks like these that can really make for an optimal experience for our users. We love working with our trusted testers. Like I said, it's a small group of admins and their end users. They're the kind of people who we can just email out of the blue and they'll respond to us. They know who we are. We work closely. But what they can't do is tell us how the product is going to work at scale. So for that, we need to ease ourselves into general availability and get broader feedback. So we move into our early adopter programs. The core question is, how does it work at scale? By the time the product is in the early adopter program, it should be pretty stable. We know that it's really hard to deal with change management as an admin, so we want our admins to know that they can roll this product out and it's just going to work and support all the use cases of their users. They should be confident that it'll work for everybody. They understand that we're not going to make big changes, and we know that if we did make big changes, that would be really difficult on them. So we announced in the fall of 2016 that we were going into the early adopter program with the new Hangouts video meeting experience. And we've really been focused on fit and finish. We're now in the process of collecting in-product feedback, tracking bugs, and really just seeking feedback via surveys to see what more we need to do to make this even better. The next step is going to be general availability. We're not there yet, but we're not going to stop collecting feedback when we do go to general availability, because it's really important for us to know how it's working in the real world. We'll keep checking on bugs, we'll keep tracking in-product feedback, but more importantly, we'll also sort of kick off the cycle again and start thinking about what the next product is that we might build in this space. I'm going to hand it over to Gill now for an example of how this doesn't always work out exactly as planned.
Thank you, Ben. So, of course, right, you can create this great process, but then something will come along that doesn't really fit into that process. And for us, that was Jamboard. And that's because Jamboard isn't just about great software. It's about testing and producing great hardware as well. So for those of you who haven't seen Jamboard, it's Google's take on the digital whiteboard. We're trying to enable easier team collaboration. So if you haven't touched Jamboard, I believe there's one just out in the corridor here. Go play with it afterwards. But you can see, you can draw, you can write on this Jamboard, you can insert images, virtual stickies, all sorts of different objects. And you can also access that Jamboard remotely through other devices. So because we're talking about hardware here, we had to get really creative about the process that we were using. So instead of going through trusted tester and then an EAP, we decided to work really closely with a few very select partners. We would go into the partners' offices. We would observe people using Jamboard. We'd also observe them when they weren't using Jamboard, right? When they were doing brainstorming or other collaborative work, but they chose not to include Jamboard. We also interviewed users individually to get more focused feedback and understand how Jamboard fit into their user journeys. And we also interviewed IT admins, because again, like Ben was saying, we understand that the IT admin is that conduit, right? IT admins are going to be the key to the success of deploying and managing Jamboards out in the wild. All right, so we've talked about early stage research. We've talked about trusted tester, how that's like the first time that it sees the customer on scale, but it still might change a little bit. We've seen early access programs where the product is more finalized. And of course, once we launch, we don't just stop there, right? Our methods of research, of gathering user feedback just change. We now have bigger scale. So we use in-product feedback. We use in-product surveys as well. That information is really important to us. We have teams that will process that feedback, that create groupings, that categorize that feedback so that we can understand both whether there are new problems arising, whether we've fixed the problems that we were trying to fix, and just to understand what's going on with our users. And we can also look at behavior, actual behavior in the product. What are people doing? What features are they engaging with? And triangulating all these different sources of data or feedback can help us then prioritize the product roadmap moving ahead. And I do want to point out, one of the surveys we do send out regularly every quarter is to IT admins and developers, because as we've said multiple times already through this presentation, we know that you have very specific user journeys, that it's critical to us that we understand your pain points and your needs, so that we can ensure that our products get rolled out successfully to the end users. So if you do see this in your inbox, please consider taking time to fill it out. So we've talked about the 4 different stages. I want to mention, too, being a quantitative researcher, that we also take into account quantitative feedback through all 4 of these stages. And by quantitative feedback, I mean metrics. And one way that we use metrics is by pulling together that quantitative information with the qualitative feedback that we've got from our users to make sure that we're ready to move from one of these stages to the next stage. Are we ready to go from trusted tester to EAP? Are we ready to go to general access? And we want to think beyond just click-through rates and page views at this point, too. And so one of the ways that we do that at Google is by using this framework with a very cute acronym. It's talking about the range of different metrics that we should be thinking about when we're considering measuring how our users are interacting with our product. There are 5 areas here. I'm going to focus on just 2. And these 2 are the ones that I've seen come up again and again as we push new products out. So retention. Retention is all about long-term engagement. Does a person keep coming back? And for different products, we expect different levels of engagement over time, right? For Gmail, if you're anything like me, I'm in there multiple times a day. For presentations, not quite as often. I'm not senior enough yet. I do a lot of other work, too. So it's not about how often people are coming back, but that number stays pretty stable over time, right? We're keeping people coming back at a certain rate. So for Gmail, it might be every day. For presentations, every week or every month. And the Gmail example is a little forced here because we know that our end users, they have to do email. They have no choice about the matter, right? They have to be in Gmail checking their email for the majority of our G Suite customers. And so that's why we also want to look at happiness. So happiness is about user opinions. It's how happy is a user. Often we use satisfaction as a measure of this. You'll probably see that in in-product surveys. How satisfied are you with this product on a scale of 1 to 5, from very happy or very satisfied to very unsatisfied? And we track those metrics over time for our existing products. We want to make sure that they're steadily increasing. And we also set thresholds for those for new products and new features that we want to launch. So Hart can tell us about the breadth of metrics that we're interested in using. One principle that overrides all of these 5 areas is that our metrics should be aligned with the goals that we have for our user. And by that, I mean, how are we trying to help our user achieve their user journey? And we also want to take into account who that user is as part of that, too. So to illustrate that in an example, let's talk about Google Sites. So we released a new version of Google Sites late last year. And one of the user goals as part of this release was that it was easier for people to create sites, to share information. And so instead of just looking at, how often did somebody click on a page that was a new site versus an old site, we tried to align it with this idea of creating sites. So one of the metrics we looked at was we asked people who created the site, so that was our user type, how easy it was to do that. And then we compared that with how easy people reported it was to create sites through the old version of the product. And another metric that was associated with that user goal was around retention. The next time that person had to create another site, did they do so with the new product, or did they choose to go back to the old product? So we had that happiness and retention metric. And with those two metrics, along with user feedback, we felt we could safely make a decision to launch that product. All right. So just to recap, we have these 4 stages: the early stage testing and discovery, releasing to our trusted testers, where things might change a little bit, then early adopter program, where we're releasing it more widely, with the assumption that things aren't going to change too much, right? We're just doing a little polishing, a little fixing before we launch. And then finally launching to general availability. And at that, I'd like to invite Lindsay to come and talk about team drives.
So to start, can I get a show of hands? Has anyone here not heard of team drives? Okay, so a couple. So to catch you up, if you're not familiar with it, team drives are new collaborative spaces in Google Drive, and they live parallel to My Drive, but they're specifically created with teams in mind. And they're designed around 3 core tenets. So first, files stay after employees leave the company. Second, the sharing rules are much simpler than the sharing rules in Drive today. And then lastly, they get your team's content all in one place. So with team drives, shared spaces now look the same for everyone. New members joining a team automatically get access to the content they need right away, and files don't go missing accidentally. So with team drives, we went through each of those phases of getting user feedback that Ben and Gill described as we were progressing towards general availability. And through those phases, we had 3 main goals. So we needed to determine whether team drives as a feature was fit for launch. And we also needed to understand what works well or maybe what doesn't work well when customers start to use team drives for their actual day-to-day collaboration. And then lastly, we really wanted to gather longitudinal feedback about how domains and teams and users within those domains incorporate team drives into their workflow, and then how would they use it differently from shared folders? So can I get another show of hands? How many of you are from domains that participated in our early adopter program for team drives? Anybody? Cool, that's awesome. Okay, so early adopter program, or EAP, it was our first large-scale test of team drives. And at first was with around 100 domains and later thousands of domains. And we were gathering both qualitative and quantitative data that we could use to evaluate our success metrics and gauge our launch readiness. And it was significant because it represented the first time a large amount of G Suite admins could start testing out team drives and thinking about how to deploy it within their domains. And then also it was significant in that we had to sign up customers at scale. We were getting feedback at scale. We were responding to that feedback at scale. And that took an immense amount of coordination across many different groups at Google. So, like I said, we initially started out our early adopter program with just under 100 domains. And it was an internationally representative group of customers, range of sizes, range of industries, all different types of companies. And as a requirement for getting access during this early part of our early adopter program, customers had to be willing to give access to team drives to at least some of their non-IT users. And also to have those users participate in some feedback surveys. So we knew that when we gave access to team drives, we could rely on G Suite admins to, give us their feedback as they started trying it out and thinking about how they were planning on deploying it. But we also really needed to balance that with feedback from end users as well. So for example, we wanted to be able to measure whether we were hitting our success metrics around adoption and engagement. So were users actually trying team drives? Did they come back to it and try it again after they tried it that first time? And we needed to understand, was it actually addressing the user and team and domain level needs that it was intended to address? And was it generating satisfaction? So because of this, we ran a survey with both admins and users, and we did that before anyone had access to team drives. And that became our baseline for things like satisfaction, happiness. And then we ran another survey after people had tried team drives for a few weeks. So that way we were able to get a good baseline and then use that to evaluate success. And through those surveys, we were also able to get an understanding of the whys behind the usage metrics we saw. So why were people using team drives or not using team drives? So thank you so much for those of you who participated in this early phase of our early adopter program and participated in surveys and had your users participate in surveys. It's just such a valuable source of feedback for us. So what did we learn from our early adopter program for team drives? Well, in addition to a host of useful feedback, we had two big takeaways. And one of those was around change management. So we often talk about change management at the domain level, right? So as we work with G Suite admins to understand what's needed for domains to change their processes or deploy new products or features and educate users. But in our EAP, we heard that teams themselves need change management. So with a feature like team drives, it's designed for teams, and the whole team needs to be coordinated and have critical mass to actually make a switch of that magnitude, a switch in their processes around where they're storing their team's content. So we've worked to incorporate onboarding into the feature that helps teams understand team drives as they get started with using it. The other was a confirmation that being able to migrate your team's existing content into team drives is really crucial for adoption. So today, teams have their Google Drive content in large shared folder structures with a lot of different file owners. And both G Suite admins and users need the ability to easily move files they don't own and folders full of files they don't own into a team drive. For admins, often it's this initial bulk content migration, trying to get everything into team drives for the first time. But also in larger domains, those admins need certain users or maybe even all their users to help them with the scale of that task. And then in a lot of companies' cultures, the teams themselves need to be able to move their existing folders of content into team drives as needed without having to involve their G Suite admins. So we were working to address these findings, and we reached out to customers who had previously contacted us with feedback, about that very thing, about content migration. We needed to make sure we were going to get the experience right for admins and users across different kinds of domains, different expectations around access or sharing or the need for control. So really the ability to reach back out to customers like this is an important part of what makes Trusted Tester and Early Adopter programs so powerful. We're really trying to create a relationship, cultivate that relationship, where we are able to have a back and forth conversation about our products and features. So one of those customers that we reached out to was Hingham Institution for Savings, which is a community bank in the Boston area. So I will now bring Joe Bears, who is the CIO at Hingham, up on stage, and we'll hear from him about what it was like to participate in giving feedback to Google. So
Hi, everyone.
So we understand that you guys are trying to transition more fully into the cloud, and moving to G Suite is a part of that. So tell us why that's important for Hingham.
For multiple reasons. Server consolidation being one of them, and disaster recovery. With G Suite, we've been able to get out of the business of maintaining servers. We've cut down about 1/3 of our servers. And we're not doing things like backup on them anymore, doing antivirus updates, things of that nature. Instead, we're able to take more time, advancing the company goals, doing things that help our customers.
So why Drive? How is Drive an important piece of that?
Drive's brought a lot of sharing and collaboration. Previously, with our old productivity suite, we were, somebody would go in, would have a group of people that needed to update something, and they'd go in, try to update it, and they'd tell them that it was a read-only copy. that would result in users ending up having to make a copy, and then somebody would have to come along and roll back all those changes into one copy. With Google now, everybody can work on it at the same time, so there's a lot more collaboration, and it saves a lot of efficiencies.
So why did you guys want to be part of the early adopter program for Team Drives?
Initially, when we set up when we got into Drive, we needed to have a common area to share all the data. And what we did there was we created what I call a service account. And with that service account, we replicated our folder structure into it. And then from there, we shared all that out. When we saw Team Drives come along, we knew it looked like what we were actually trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So it sounds like that wasn't optimal for management, and that Team Drives was more like what.
Yeah, it was exactly what we were looking for.
Yeah. So what did you do when you first got access to Team Drives?
We started by setting it up in one of our back offices, and we ran with that for approximately a month, 2 months. And from there, we started spreading out and moving it to different departments. It really rolled out quite easy. From there, we even had some of our branches even set up their own Team Drives and migrated the data on their own. So it worked really well.
So speaking of users, how did you introduce Team Drives to them? Like, how did you orient people to just a totally new file sharing system?
It's been a pretty smooth transition. We started by replicating the whole folder structure that was on our old servers, and from there from there, we rolled it out to everybody. And working through a web browser really didn't turn out to be that much of a difference than working through File Explorer, so it really wasn't a huge change.
Great. So how have people been using Team Drive so far?
The best way to explain it is sharing and collaboration. Mm-hmm. Like I said, everybody's able to do work a lot smoother and a lot more efficiently. So it's really worked out well in that sense.
And do you have any specific use cases from a team at Hingham that you can share with us?
Probably our human resources department, the onboarding process. It used to be a process where human resources would send emails around and they'd attach the onboarding form. And now with Team Drives, they're just setting it up within the Team Drive folders, and then they send out a notification via Team Drives, and that everybody just goes in and works on it as they need be. And it isn't it's a process that was getting held up before, and it's no longer getting held up. It's great.
That's so good to hear. So, like I mentioned earlier, Hingham had ended up participating in this follow-up study we did at some point during our early adopter program about content migration. So why did you guys want to participate again in that?
Well, we wanted to have input. Like I said, we had that user, the utility user, as I call it, set up, that we have data in, and we wanted to have input on how to get that data out of the utility user and move it over into the Team Drive folders. Additionally, we're changing as a company, and we want to have more partners that are open to feedback. We have other partners that we give feedback to, and they're not great at responding. To contrast that, we actually have one partner that's involved in doing a licensing audit with us, and it's not really helping advance the company's goal. It's more like a sales tactic. So it's great to have Google, and they're listening to our feedback, and we see it show up very quickly in the products.
For your users themselves, what do they get out of participating in something like this?
A lot of our users actually commented to me that they enjoyed doing they enjoyed the whole process of giving feedback, and some of them actually said they learned more about the product and the process. So that was a really great thing.
Cool. So when you participate in an early adopter program like you did, it's not a finished product, right? So how does that impact you? What are your thoughts on using products that aren't fully finished?
We don't mind. We realize that that's something that's going to occur with a new product like that, and we've made a decision as a company that we want to be more on the leading edge of technology like that instead of the trailing edge where stuff is more fully fleshed out. But it works great for us. So.
Okay. Yeah. So just to wrap up, what does it mean for an organization like Hingham to be involved in this feedback process with Google?
It means a lot to us. It's great that a small company like ours can have feedback into a product like that Google's creating. We have another data center that we're constantly trying to give feedback to, and they don't really listen. They ask for the feedback, and we never see it get into the product. So it's great to see it, see the changes that we ask for end up in the product.
Well, thank you so much, Joe, for coming here and speaking with us today and sharing Hangouts experience with the Team Drive's Early Adopter Program. We really appreciate it. And then for those of you in the audience who were part of that Early Adopter Program as well, thank you so much for being part of it, taking the time to share your feedback with us.
Thank you.
So what does it mean to test products like a Googler? It means we are always looking for feedback on our products, no matter what stage of the development cycle we're in. And we're always looking for new ways to engage our customers and pull in their valued feedback. We're really just in constant motion through this research cycle with each of our products. And in order for us to get this valuable user feedback, it's really vital that we have partners to work with. So without their help, which is essentially your help, this would be much harder. So if you are interested, like Jill said earlier, in having your company join our G Suite user panel so we can include your end users in our early iterative studies, for example, follow this link up here on the left so you can sign up and express interest. And then for any of you in the audience who are IT professionals or developers, you can also sign up using the link on the right to help product development on Google Cloud Platform. So in either case, it's like a quick little 5-minute survey. You'll get your name in our database. And we can't promise we'll be able to include everyone in our panels, but we're really continually looking for more participants for our studies, and we really look forward to getting your feedback so we can continue to drive product excellence within G Suite. Thank you so much.